When Laura started having nightmares, not metaphorically, but literally, every night at exactly 3:14 a.m. she woke up feeling like her hands were being held, we attributed it to stress. Her job as a hospice nurse is really not great. But then the spots. Purple, like bruises, but without pain. They showed up after every shift. Dr. Evans from the New Dawn Clinic said that this is a rare form of latex allergy. He prescribed ointment and antidepressants. A week later, Laura found a bottle in the closet with the inscription, Sample 12G. Not for patients. Inside is the same ointment. Maybe it's a typo. I tried to calm her down, but I called the clinic myself. "Ah, you found our experimental sample." The secretary laughed. "Dr. Evans wanted to give it to you after the FDA approval." We believed it. Stupid, isn't it? Main plot, beginning. The spots began to fester. Instead of allergies, ulcers that smell like rotten fish. Laura quit, but the nightmares intensified. Now she could see the corridors of the clinic, the screaming patients, Dr. Evans in a respirator. "These are not dreams," she trembled, showing the photo on her phone. The interior of the clinic matched her visions, down to the smallest detail. I hacked her fitness bracelet. The data showed that every night at 3:14, her pulse dropped to 30 beats. Like a corpse. A security guard with a taser met us at the clinic. Dr. Evans died 3 months ago. But we saw him yesterday. The secretary, the one, had disappeared. I found a magazine marked Changing of the Guard Protocol on her desk. A photo of Laura inside with a note, Candidate 12G. Stage, incubation. At night, Laura screamed and pointed at the wall. Read letters that weren't there a second ago. "You're on duty. Wake up." She grabbed a pair of scissors and started cutting her hand in search of a chip. I contacted Laura's former colleague, Mark, an orderly who resigned from the hospice after a strange incident with a patient. He agreed to meet at an abandoned parking lot near the bridge. His face was haggard, and his left arm was hidden under a thick layer of bandages. They implant them through ointments. Mark unwound the bandage. Underneath it is the same purple ulcer, but with a metallic sheen in the center. It's not a chip. It's an organic implant. It grows like a mycelium. He handed me a USB stick with data, recordings of hospice cameras where Dr. Evans injected patients with samples disguised as painkillers. Those who survived disappeared after a week. In the column, Diagnosis, there was, Transfer completed. They're creating biological couriers, Mark coughed. The blood left scarlet splashes on the steering wheel. The implant matures, then releases spores. Everyone who inhales them will become new carriers. When Laura heard this, she broke the bathroom mirror and collected the pieces. Cut it out. Now. She pressed the blade against the sore on her shoulder. I saw something as thick as a finger moving under the skin. The implant turned out to be alive. Threads like roots entangled the muscles. When I touched the tweezers, they bit into my palm. The pain was fiery, as if acid had been poured into my veins. Cut it off. Laura stabbed him in the shoulder. Blood gushed onto the floor, mixing with the yellowish slime. We burned the roots in the microwave. They moved even in the fire. The next day, Mark stopped contacting me. His apartment was emptied, the walls were covered with the disinfection code 12G. Neighbors said that the fever epidemic was eliminated by a private clinic. Laura was relieved, but I noticed a rash on my wrist. I started having dreams, too, corridors, screams, Evans in a respirator. He was pointing at his watch, 3:14. I found a box of her old hospice stuff in the garage. Under the stack of forms was a contract marked Longevity Research Volunteer. Laura's signature was forged. "They infiltrated you through me," she cried, clutching the documents. "I brought this home. We hacked the clinic's database through Mark's old tablet. Our photos were in the active samples section. There is a countdown timer nearby, 23 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds. 23 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. The neighbor's child, whom Laura was playing with a week ago, started coughing up blood. We stared at the timer, unable to look away. 23:59:45. 23:59:44. What does that mean? Laura touched the screen with trembling fingers. I refreshed the page. The active samples section has disappeared. Instead, a message appeared. Isolation is activated. Preparation for transfer. Laura screamed when there were sharp bangs on the entrance door outside the window. They're here. I grabbed Mark's flash drive and put it in my pocket. But no one tried to break down our door. The blows continued on the floor below. We heard muffled voices, then a thud, as if something heavy had fallen. We need to leave, I whispered. Laura nodded convulsively and grabbed her jacket. We opened the kitchen window facing the courtyard. I jumped down first and helped her down. At that moment, the door to our apartment flew off its hinges. Without taking the road apart, we rushed to the parking lot. The night was chilly, and the air smelled of ozone, as if a thunderstorm was gathering. Where to now? Laura asked, squeezing my hand. We need someone who knows more about this. I remembered the last file I opened before I closed the tablet. A list of names. Among others, Dr. Vincent Carlson. Next to the name is the date, a few months ago, and the note, withdrawn. Doctors don't just disappear, I said. Laura understood me without words. We found him in a nursing home on the outskirts of the city. A small building with a peeling sign that reads, Greenwood Sanatorium. Vincent Carlson turned out to be an old man with translucent skin and deeply sunken eyes. You've got the wrong address, he muttered when I called his name. No, doctor, Laura sat down in front of him, pulling up her sleeve and showing the healed but still inflamed wound. That's your business. The old man was silent for a long time, then asked quietly. What time is it? I looked at my watch, 2:51. You can still be saved, he said. You have 23 minutes. Carlson said that he once worked at the New Dawn. He developed the changing of the guard protocol. We were sponsored by the pharmaceutical corporation, but everything got out of control. We wanted to create a method of prolonging life through regenerative tissue transplantation. But the system started using native speakers differently. Are they raising us as expendable? Laura's voice was trembling. Carlson rubbed his temples tiredly. They make you containers. After a while, you will stop being yourself. There will be someone else in you. He leaned forward. You have to run. But first, give me the flash drive. I hesitated. I know you have it, he said wearily. This is my last chance to fix everything. I handed him the drive. He inserted it into his laptop and quickly scanned through the files. Then he turned the screen towards us. Here they are. The cycle is completed means that the carrier has disappeared. Laura covered her mouth with her hand. Mark was on the completed list. And what does transfer mean? I asked. Carlson looked at me hard. It means he's not the same person he was. Laura stood up, turning pale. Could he be alive? He can move. He can talk. But it's not Mark anymore. I realized that she was shaking. Doctor, tell me honestly, I looked Carlson straight in the eye. How much time do we have before we change? He glanced at his watch. 3:14. Laura clutched her head. What, is something going on? She fell to her knees, gasping for air. I rushed to her, but Carlson held me back. It started, he said hoarsely. Her mind is resisting. I held her close. Laura, are you with me? She squeezed my hands. Her eyes suddenly widened. Who are you? What is it? she whispered. Carlson yanked me back. It's not her. Laura jerked like a doll on strings. I screamed her name. Carlson grabbed a syringe from the table and plunged it into her neck. She arched her back and lay still. Is she going to wake up? Yes, but not for long, his voice was strained. We need to leave. Right now. I picked Laura up in my arms. Where to? Carlson closed the laptop and put it in his bag. There is one place. I know where it all started. We were driving along the highway at night when Laura stirred. Where are we? Safe, I lied. No, she said softly. They're inside. I looked in the rearview mirror. There were lights behind us, in the distance. There are too many lights. They were approaching too fast. Carlson gripped the steering wheel. It's too late. They're already here. We're contagious, Laura said, clutching my arm. If it is transmitted so easily. I grabbed a hair clipper, turned it on, and shaved off her entire head. Stupidly, I thought the spores might have settled on the hair. Then he put his head up himself. The blade was buzzing, and Laura was wiping my shoulders with a wet towel. If we sneeze in the store or on the street, I stopped, feeling my panic grow. Then that's it, Laura looked at the laptop screen. The timer showed 23 hours 42 minutes and 17 seconds. We didn't know what would happen when it reached 0. But we knew that no one would warn us. I opened Mark's data. They were encrypted, but some of the files could be read. One of the documents referred to the changing of the guard protocol and the integration stages. Incubation. 3 to 6 weeks. The sample adapts to the carrier, creating a primary implant. The awakening. 6 to 9 weeks. Symptoms include nightmares, disorientation, and bruising at the implantation sites. Transfer. After the 9th week. The sample is active. Then there was a list of dates and surnames. Some of them had completed written next to them. I scrolled down. Laura McDonald. 8 weeks, 5 days. She saw my expression and snatched the laptop out of my hands. 5 days. Do we have 5 days before the transfer? I remembered Mark, his cough, the blood on the steering wheel. He was later than us. Mark was 8 weeks old. I felt fear settle like a cold weight inside. We had no idea what was going to happen on the 9th. We spent the next day packing. Everything that could be useful, a first aid kit, knives, gloves, alcohol. I found an old pistol that my grandfather kept in the basement and put it in my backpack. Laura was checking the windows while I was looking for a way to leave unnoticed. We need a doctor who is not affiliated with this clinic, she said. I nodded. There was one name in my head. Dr. Phillips. He left the hospital a year before Laura got a job there. They said he was forced. I found his number in my old contacts and dialed it. Who's that? The voice was old, incredulous. Doctor, I need help. What do I owe you? Novi Respite Clinic. Silence. This isn't a phone conversation, he finally said. I'll meet you at the warehouse by the marina at midnight. He hung up the phone. We arrived first. A huge building, a rusty container with the inscription, Biohazard. Phillips drove up in an old truck. He went out and lit a cigarette. We barely recognized him. He was decrepit, hunched over, but his eyes remained the same. Tell me. Laura pulled the bandages off her shoulder. Phillips narrowed his eyes. How many weeks? The 8th, I replied. He sucked in a breath. You can't be operated on. Why? It's not a foreign object. It's a part of you. To cut is to kill the host. Laura swallowed. But we have 5 days. Phillips threw away his cigarette butt and looked at her. No. You have less than a day. I felt cold. What do you mean? He took out a stack of documents folded in 4. The transfer doesn't start in 9 weeks. It begins when the host comes into contact with a new organism. A neighbor's child came back to mind. His cough. We infected him. Phillips nodded. The timer is not your deadline. This is the activation period. The timer on the laptop showed 12 hours 47 minutes and 31 seconds. Laura covered her face with her hands. How to stop it? Phillips looked at her with regret. The only way is to kill the host before the process is complete. No. I pushed him away. This is nonsense. You don't understand, Phillips raised his voice. When the timer reaches 0, you won't be yourself. And if there is another way? Laura clenched her fists. He's not here. You're a doctor. Phillips sighed heavily. I've been working with this program. I thought we were looking for a cure. Then I realized that they were creating a transportation network. What kind of network? You are being used as a container. You carry something in you that will spread when the time comes. I remembered how the spores moved in the fire. But if we just leave, it won't stop the process. Laura looked at me. We need time. Phillips thought about it. There's a lab 3 hours from here. They are independent. Maybe they can do something. I grabbed my backpack. Where? He wrote the address. Laura looked at the timer. 9 hours 22 minutes and 9 seconds. We got in the car and drove out onto the highway. Halfway there, Laura groaned. It hurts. I looked at her shoulder. The veins turned black, spreading like cracks. Be patient, I gripped the steering wheel. 7 hours 41 minutes and 56 seconds. She was breathing heavily. It's moving inside. I looked at the map. We still have 40 minutes to go. Hold on, Laura. 5 hours 32 minutes and 11 seconds. She trembled. I feel that. We're almost there. The laboratory appeared ahead. 3 hours and 14 minutes. She screamed. I pressed the accelerator to the floor. 2 hours 57 minutes and 23 seconds. The lab was empty. Let's go inside. I grabbed her by the arms. 2 hours 41 minutes and 8 seconds. She looked at me with bleary eyes. It's talking to me. I dragged her inside. 2 hours 14 minutes and 33 seconds. There was a container marked sterile on the table. Hold on. I grabbed a scalpel. 1 hour 59 minutes and 48 seconds. Laura began to breathe faster. Do it. Now. I looked at her. 1 hour 43 minutes and 11 seconds. She squeezed my hand. Do it. I picked up the scalpel. 1 hour 22 minutes and 9 seconds. I'm sorry. The scalpel was shaking in his hand. Laura looked into my eyes. Her gaze was clear, but I saw fear in it. She didn't beg, she didn't cry, she didn't try to push me away. 1 hour 14 minutes and 57 seconds. I couldn't do it. We'll find another way, I whispered, dropping the scalpel. She tried to protest, but she couldn't. I grabbed one of the containers, injected an unknown transparent liquid into a syringe and injected it into her vein. Hold on. I shouted, starting up the nearest computer. Files, research, data. All about the changing of the guard program. I frantically searched for something that could save her. 57 minutes and 22 seconds. Laura screamed. Waves ran through the veins under the skin, as if something was moving inside. No, 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 no. I grabbed her hand, but the skin under my fingers felt strange, hot and throbbing. The computer beeped. I saw the file, neutralization protocol. Opened. The only possible method to completely stop the process is cryostasis. Cooling below -30 degrees Celsius for 12 hours can lead to complete degradation of the sample. I rushed to the lab capsules. I was working alone. 45 minutes and 9 seconds. Laura, can you hear me? She tried to say something, but only opened her mouth. I picked her up and dragged her to the capsule. 37 minutes and 56 seconds. I started the cooling system and put it inside. I'm sorry. He closed the capsule. 32 minutes and 14 seconds. Laura twitched. I saw something moving under her skin, trying to escape. I typed in the startup code. 29 minutes and 59 seconds. The panel blinked. The temperature began to drop rapidly. Laura opened her eyes. For a second, they were hers. Thank you, she breathed. 23 minutes and 12 seconds. She fell silent. I fell to my knees, unable to look. I don't know how much time has passed. I woke up from the cold. The screen showed -32 degrees Celsius. Nothing was moving inside the capsule. I sat down at the computer again. The file on the changing of the guard was detailed. The transfer has already taken place. But it was not completed. Cryostasis stops the process. But it doesn't destroy it. I opened another tab. Isolation protocol. The subject with the stopped process must be moved to a closed bin. Defrosting is possible only with full antiviral therapy, which has not yet been developed. I exhaled slowly. Laura is not dead. But she's not alive either. 3 days have passed. I called Phillips. Is it over? He asked. No. But this is no longer her war. I arranged with him to transport the capsule. The bunker was 100 kilometers away. I left at dawn. Looking in the mirror, I noticed something flashed in my pupils. The timer turned on again. 9 weeks, 6 days. I smiled slowly.